Hi, everybody, and welcome. Today I have Chava Rosenbaum with me, who is one of the moms that I've met through my Nurtured Heart journey. Chava is actually part of my group coaching group, which is such a special group. So it's really been inspiring to be with all of these amazing parents together monthly and really get to know each other. Um, But Chava is here because I got a request from somebody in the coming, asking to hear about somebody who maybe is earlier on the journey of Nurtured Heart and still kind of struggling with implementation, kind of like more like real life story, real life, and just asking for more voices of people who are still in the implementation stages of it. So Chava was brave enough and kind enough to come on and share, the real life story. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see where this takes us. But Chava, if you could just introduce yourself, let us know who you are, what your family looks like, and let us into your world a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Missy, for doing this. I was hesitant at first to do this because I see the other people you interview and everyone seems to really have this down. But I do feel like, as invested as I am, that it takes time, and I am still learning. I have even done the CTI course, and which was amazing, and yet I do still struggle with it. Um, I started with my first intro course a couple of years ago. I did the intro course again a year later, and then did CTI this past November. Um, and what led me to want to do it is, so I have three kids. My oldest son is 12, my daughter is 10, and my youngest son is almost 5. And my oldest son in particular, we were really struggling with. He We initially thought it was ADHD, and then he was diagnosed a couple years ago with Tourette's and some autism. Um, and that was a journey in and of itself, just because we never hear anything about Tourette's, and the only thing that is heard about it in general is that it's some kids screaming out swear words, and that's not what we were seeing. So we were pretty surprised by the diagnosis. It shows up a lot with impulsivity, so it looks like ADHD. Um, but And then as I learned more about Tourette's, I also was seeing that my son didn't look like that. Like, these kids were able to explain themselves really well and explain how they were feeling, and that they were bothered by all the tics that they have, because that's another feature of it. And my son wasn't that verbal. And then I realized, well, that's because that's where the autism piece comes in. So his presentation of his diagnosis didn't look like other people's. And so it is one reason why I am very open about sharing about it, because I want others to know that it exists. It's probably more prevalent than we think, and that it doesn't have to be a hopeless thing. So, anyways, there's some challenging behaviors there, and we had done ABA therapy, which we continue to do, and that in combination with NHA is very helpful. And we had done other therapies, um, but I was getting very frustrated as a parent, and I just realized I needed something else that really resonated with me, that didn't focus on trying to get him to behave differently. I mean, there's always that piece in my mind, like, how do I change that behavior? But I was really sold, and why I did the intro course again, or I did CTI, the intensive training, was because I wanted to learn more about resetting myself in the face of all this. That I realized that so much of parenting is, who am I being, and how calm am I able to be? And this was the only approach I saw that really focused as much on that as any behavior that I was trying to reroute. So in other words, I feel like NHA is, quote, working, if only that I am able to not say something negative if only, if I'm just um, not shouting at the kids, or if I'm able to take a breath instead of just saying what's going wrong. So that part is challenging for me, to not focus on like what they could, he and my other kids too. My 5-year-old is very 4.5-year-old is very challenging. So it's easier for me to jump on what could be better. Um, so that's where I struggle with. I know the tools, but like rewiring my brain. Um, and I have found that despite the challenges I continue to have, and kind of remembering like, okay, wait, nurtured heart, like get that back in that mode, because I have to rewire, all these years of conditioning. Thank God I did have great parents. And I can feed off of that, but still it wasn't necessarily nurtured heart. So I've decided to stick with this because I want to proactively rewire my brain. And I'm doing that by, first of all, not giving up. So even if I don't do it, quote, right, if I don't feel like, oh, that was not a nurture heart comment, or I just pointed out what he could have been doing better. Okay, pause, reset myself, start again. Not just every day is a new opportunity, but every moment is a new opportunity. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to stay in the conversation. So I listen to a lot of Musie's podcasts, in an attempt to do that as I'm cooking, as I'm getting ready in the morning, or getting ready for bed. Sometimes that's when I'll listen. And it just puts in all that positive stuff in my brain, so that in those moments of tension, or like not knowing what to do, I can just kind of remember some of those messages that were so powerful in the podcast. And I have a couple books that I haven't picked up as much, but I, do that. I have these monthly coaching calls that Musie leads. That's an attempt to stay in the conversation and challenge myself to talk about what's going on and how to do things better. Comments. One comment that resonated recently in one of your podcasts with your whole family, Musie, was one of your sisters saying, like, realizing that, oh, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to fix anything. I just have to focus on what's going right. That in of itself is hard sometimes, when you see a kid doing what you don't think is right, and you just want to be like, stop doing that, or no, not that, this. But just being able to say, or if the kids are arguing, which happens all the time, and like, how am I going to resolve this? Well, I don't have to know the answer. And I can just say, you know what? I'm really glad that you guys aren't hitting each other right now. I'm really glad that you guys are using your words. And even though it's, maybe they're shouting to do it, or just removing myself from the situation, maybe that's a success for me at that moment. Just having the confidence that they can figure it out themselves. So, yeah, I can pause there.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. So I love everything you're saying, and I think it's so valuable for parents to hear about um, how, and I think this is really true of Nurtured Heart fully, is that success doesn't look like doing Nurtured Heart all the time and like always having the right thing to say and always knowing what to do. Like that isn't actually Nurtured Heart. Like the Nurtured Heart approach is about being in the moment and doing the best we can in that moment and accepting it as that's just the way it's meant to be, and on to the next moment and just trying again and not giving up. And like you said, resetting yourself, coming back, giving yourself more opportunities. Um, I I will see if we get there, because I want to stay in the thread where we are right now. I have a follow-up question for what you just said. But I am curious also to go more into the Tourette's diagnosis, and just hear maybe more about that for our audience, to hear more about what that looks like, how that presents, and just it's always I'm someone listening might have a child that they wouldn't have thought to even look into Tourette's for, and just also to have an understanding of other people in the world. So I'd love to hear more about that. But from everything you're saying here, I kind of want to ask you, and you maybe did already kind of say it, but But what would you say is like the most challenging aspect for you, like day to day, that you find yourself like struggling with the most? And then like follow up to that, how do you deal with that? And how have you not given up? You know, like how are you still here and saying you're committed?
Yeah. Um, I would say the things that I struggle with the most, two things. One is when my kids fight. I think it takes me back to my childhood when my brother and I fought. My relationship with my brother is very much like my daughter's relationship to my older son. Um, I see myself very much in her, and I see my brother in my son. And um, it's interesting. My brother had very different, but in many ways similar challenges. Um, and even though I was the younger child, I just kept trying to tell him what to do. And I was, behaved a little bit more, um, doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so, anyways, I have to take myself out of that situation, and realize that I'm not my daughter. I don't have to protect her. I don't have to do anything. And this is where the nurture heart comes in. Um, that I don't have to step in and say, like, no fighting. I mean, if it gets physical, I do have to step in. That's where it has gotten physical. And so I feel like I need to protect her um, in a way that I didn't get it as much as a kid. My parents were kind of like, you guys deserve each other, which is totally an understandable reaction, especially as I'm seeing this and feeling that way too as a parent. But I didn't feel like I was like protected in the way that I now want to for her. So I have to really work hard to bring in that nurtured heart to not react based on my gut, which is like, oh, just get in there and stop the fighting and protect her. So setting up ground rules, so um, trying to get clarity, and like, okay, if you separate them if I need to. So there is some like strategy involved, but also, like I said, just taking myself away and not adding fuel to the fire by yelling at them and saying, guys, stop, or just, so it's, again, trying to comment on what is going right. Turning to my younger son maybe and saying, thank you for not getting involved, or talking to my daughter ahead of time about what she can do and say. And same for my son, and really acknowledging him for he does have a tendency to just kind of whack somebody. So and really acknowledging him in that tense moment, like, thank you for not, like I said before, like, thank you for not hitting her. I know you are, and validating him. I think that's part of the nurtured heart too, is like, I know you're really angry right now. I can see that. And I can see why you would be frustrated um, that she just took the magazine that you really wanted and you've been saving, this whole week to read, and now she just grabbed it. And I know that you both, and there's one magazine, but thank you for taking the high road, and talk to him about character traits that he's showing and doing that. Like, that shows you're having so much self-control right now, and you're going to save that even longer. It's going to be so much more fun to read when you wait that much. And you're like, anyways, so that is all still a work in progress, because there are times when I'm feeling low energy, tired, you know, um, I just let myself fall into my instincts, and I do just get upset and say, guys, just knock it off. But then I look back at how I feel, and I feel so icky after that I reflect on. I take a moment to reflect, how could I have done that better? And um and I try and plan ahead, like, okay, I try and visualize when they fight next time, what am I going to do? And I visualize myself saying that, how am I going to calm myself down and reset myself? So I visualize myself doing that, visualize what I could have said to them, and then maybe I have a conversation with them afterwards. Um, that's the part that I want to work on more. But and then the other part that I find is so hard is when I get disrespected. So my 4-year-old is going through a phase where he'll just say like, shut up, and just kind of say no. And to not react and say, don't you dare speak to me that way, or like, so it takes a lot. And that's why I have to stay in this nurture heart game of just saying like, okay, again, I'm going to ignore that. I'll say to him, what I've gotten good at is saying to him clearly and calmly, we don't speak like that to each other. You need to reset. So I want to make it known that that's not how we talk to each other. I'm not completely ignoring it. But then not getting into a whole, argument with him, especially as a 4.5-year-old. Like, that's just pointless. He's just aggravated by something else. So having that clarity of mind myself, I'm able to say, this is really about something else. He really just wanted to wear his new shoes that don't actually fit him. And he's angry about that. That's why he's yelling at me. Or he wanted to finish playing, but he's got to go to school and he didn't get what he wanted. So just like pausing is so important. And that's what I'm getting better at, and saying, okay, what is this really about? And then acting from that space, or reacting from that space. So again, if I'm not in a good frame of mind, that still does trigger me, but I've gotten better about not letting him take me for a ride on that one, and owning my own emotions, taking more control myself of how I'm responding. And he's gotten better too. He can reset. And I've even commented, I'm like, you're so good at resetting. And he's even commented to me like, Mommy, I reset. And I'm like, yes, you did. And I started asking him at the end of the day, because this has become such a problem, I'll say at the end of the day, what is your greatness? What have your greatness has been? I actually ask all the children that at the end of the day. And he won't let me get away without saying them. Like, sometimes I'm in a hurry, or like, this is bedtime is taking too long. And he'll say, Mommy, I didn't say my greatness. I'm like, okay, what are your greatnesses? And he's like, and then he'll say like, I reset, like, that's right, you did. Or he's like started making his bed every morning. So even though he now does it every, morning, so just building him up in these other moments helps trickle into these tough moments, so that he knows himself as other than just that behavior. I know him as somebody other than just that behavior. And so I can not be as triggered by those really tough responses. Or if I am, at the end of the day, I still have some place to go back to where I could say, okay, yes, that happened, but we're not going to talk about it. And what did you do great today? And it can still be a loving moment despite whatever he threw out earlier.
Wow. Okay, Papa. There are so many practical, like, important, brilliant pieces of takeaway in everything you said. And I honestly feel like I should go to podcast school to learn how people interview and be fully present with the person talking, and also like recap everything, because I just, like, you were saying so many things. Okay. But I'm so grateful that you're here sharing for our audience, because I feel like you have said so many things that people, that will be so helpful, like hugely helpful. And I know that some of the things you've said have been hugely helpful for me as well. But I'm going to do my best here to just recap all the things you've said, because what you just did so brilliantly is walk us through like the challenge, and then like so many practical pieces of like, and this is how you deal with it, and so many different pieces of how to set ourselves up for success with that. So, and I just want to recognize you also, that you are so, you said like you're still struggling and, to implement whatever, like you are so wise and aware, like you have so much awareness about yourself. Like when you were talking about, this is based in rooted in your childhood, how like you were with your brother and how that's coming in and making it a bigger trigger for you. Or like the awareness that like you're feeling disrespected by your son, that he's telling you, words that he shouldn't be saying, but like you're so aware that he's upset about his shoes that he couldn't wear. And you're having in that moment of trigger, you're having that empathy of like, wait a second, let's like real life size. Let's make this real life size. Like, this is what's really going on. Like just so much energetic awareness and attunement, forgiveness for yourself, and that whole thing you said at the end about um, like the idea, and this is so central to nurtured heart and so powerful on any level of implementation of nurtured heart, that the idea of building him up in those, like, just guys rewind and listen to her say it because she said it so well, but like listen, like building him up in those other moments and focusing on those other moments trickles into those harder times to make them easier. So it sounds like it's trickling in for his behavior to be maybe a drop faster of a reset, or maybe a drop less intense negativity or whatever. But what I heard, even not even more, but what I relate to so much in what you said also, is that it affects the whole dynamic because you have other moments of how you see him. And so now he's not just, and you said this so well, he's not just defined by these negative behaviors. And that's not all he is in your home, in your family dynamic, in your relationship with him, and how you see him and how he sees himself. But yeah, there's moments that were really tough today, but there's also this other stuff that can then balance that out, and not only balance that out, hopefully surpass that. And how are you closing your day? And he's making sure you do it right with that greatness of like, yeah, but this is what you've really shown today. This is how you've really brought light to our family and to the world, and how I relate to how, and I'm so glad people are hearing this, how doing that helps us as parents and helps us in our relationship, not necessarily because the negative behavior and our own negative patterns as parents just disappear, but how having those moments front and center help us remember that, like, okay, this is a really bad moment. I'm my worst right now. I'm being the worst mother ever. I'm doing everything I've always sworn I'd never do. But like, this is not all of me. This is not all of him. And this is not all of our family. There's so many other moments that I can remember and look back at. And like, it's so it makes it more okay. Cause
Yes.
it's not so extreme. It's not so
Yeah.
everything. It doesn't take over. I see that you have something to say. I want to be quiet and listen.
Sorry, I keep like like I love hearing what you're saying too, and I have to work on interrupting. But what I want, I'm excited to share too, is just like I'm trying not to end his day on a bad note. I'm trying to end his day on a high note. And what did he do right? I'm trying to do the same for myself too. So it's not always the end of the day, but at some point in the day, I try, not every day, but I try to reflect and like, what did I do right today? And focus on that. And the moments that I didn't, again, how could I've handled that differently? But it's so important. And I've heard your sisters say this, about not beating themselves up in this process, because parenting can be grueling, and it's the hardest job I've ever had. And the most rewarding, got to follow it up with that, because it's true, but it's difficult, and to say the least. So you have to like say, but what did I do right? Like, where did I not shout? Where did I just keep my mouth shut? Where did I not shout as long? Where did I and just pinpoint all these different things.
Yes, thank you. And you're reminding me also that there's so many other tidbits that I want to just run through really quick because of how practical they are. So that what you just said now, ending the day with like, what did I do right? Like how, or how not worse did I get? Like I could have been worse and I wasn't. That's also success. And like ending my day with like pointing out what's good for them, pointing out what's good for me, not just for them, but for me, so that I can feel better, so that I can have that positive ending where I can be more motivated to then get up the next day and continue and not give up, which is the biggest thing I'm hearing from you, is this commitment to like just
Yeah.
trying again and not falling off the wagon. And so that
Yes.
brings me back to the other piece you were saying in the beginning of how you're setting yourself up for success in this process of falling and getting up and falling and getting up and struggling. And is this like, so a few things you said, like staying in the community, staying in the conversation. You use those words. I love that. Staying in the conversation. How are you doing that? You're talking about it every chance you get. You're doing the monthly group coaching. You're listening to the podcasts. Just
Just
giving yourself
Facebook
opportunities
chats.
to Facebook chat. Yes, there is a Facebook group, guys. Nurtured Heart Institute has a public Facebook group for anybody. There's no prerequisite training that you need to have. And there's a chat off of that group that you can just post anything and watch other people post and discuss things and ask questions and just be inspired. So that's an amazing community on Chava. Yes, I've seen you on that chat. And so being active there and just staying in the conversation, right? Because yes, it's like anything in life, you get rusty. It's like machinery. You can't overuse it because it's gonna break down from overuse. But also if it never gets used, it's gonna get rusty. So it's like that balance of like, but staying in the game, staying in the staying in the routine of it. I mean, we know with creating habits, everything. When you stay in it and you keep reminding yourself of it, in Judaism, right? There's so much about like rituals and routines that we do all the time to keep ourselves connected, where we're praying, and I'm sure in other religions too. But I can speak for Judaism. We're praying every day. We're praying 3 times a day. We're blessing before we have our food. Um, there's a ritual when we walk through a doorway to pause and we have a little scroll on our door that reminds us that God is protecting us. Like just all these all the time keeping us connected. Every Saturday we're turning off our phones and we're connecting with our spirituality and with our religion. And then there's the holidays and the high holidays, and it's like just so many opportunities to reset and stay in the conversation and stay in the learning and stay, because you can't just like not, there's this work that this is what I'm hearing from you. I'm hearing this level of commitment that's so deep, and this level which it's not just dry commitment. There's a love and devotion for your children and for this home you want to have and for this parent you want to be for them.
Yes.
That is propelling you to have this level of commitment that's keeping you in the game. I want to stay in the conversation. So that's a huge practical piece for our audience to hear, is staying in the game and staying in the conversation. And I love that other piece you said, when it goes wrong and you have that yucky feeling after, that yucky feeling can have so many effects, Chava, on a person. There could be, I can think of so many. I could think of eating my emotions away. I could think of scrolling on my phone for too long. I could think of beating myself up in some other way, becoming super, super critical with myself, or letting it out on everybody else, or giving up completely, turning to my spouse, my partner, or whatever is going on and being whoever I have, or hiring someone and being like, I can't do it, it's done. I'm out, or to my kids, just like shutting the door on them, that's it, emotionally or physically, that's it. I'm gone. I can't deal with you guys. But what I'm hearing you do with that pain of looking back at a situation and saying, ouch, that hurt. I did not do that well. I did not like the way I was, is you're reflecting on that and asking yourself, how can I do it better? You're making it constructive. And that is so cool, because it's almost like you're not letting it go to waste. Not only is your yucky moment with your kid no longer a negative thing, it's actually becoming a positive thing, because we talk in Judaism about like turning the darkness into light, right? It's taking that yucky and actually using it as an opportunity to become even better, because here you are role playing in your mind. And I hear how much clarity you're having, that stand 3 clarity, where you're really walking yourself through what went wrong, what could I do next time, how can I prepare myself. And I hear both sides of it. You're both looking at the child of like the situation, what does the situation need, how can I do this better in reference to them, but also for yourself, being super aware. This is a trigger for me. This reminds me of my childhood, or this is really hard for me when I'm disrespected. You're so aware of that, and you're not just being in denial of the real life challenge. And so you're like, okay, so with all these pieces of information that I have, I don't hear self-judgment. I don't hear shame. I hear practical, loving, gentle support of yourself. What's my self-care plan? How am I going to do me? How will I reset myself? How will I take care of myself in this time? Which, guys listening, like, that is so kind and so generous, and what we all deserve is to not in those moments. Those moments are going to happen. Let them be. Shh, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Let it be. Get through it. You're going to be ugly. I feel like the only difference between me and other parents, when, people are like, oh, you're such an amazing mother. And I'm owning it. And I've done hard work to get here. So like, I've earned my spot, like I've worked really hard. And I work really hard every single day. But I think like the main difference between me and, maybe I'll say old me, maybe that's the best way to say it. The difference between me and old me is not that I don't ever yell or be negative or do things that I've sworn I'd never do. I still do that a lot, but less, yes, but I still do it. But the difference is that it only happens in that moment and then I let go of it. Aside for the reflection, like you're talking about, of how can I do this better, I'm leaving it. I'm not holding on to it. I'm not beating myself up for it. I'm not diagnosing myself with that I'm the worst mother in the world and shouldn't even have permission to have kids. Like none of that. No self-judgment, no self-criticism. I'm like, okay, that happened. Ouch. What do I want to do about it? That conversation, like you said, the repair. And there are so many lessons your kids are learning from seeing mommy be not that great and then seeing mommy take that to her room or to her heart or to her journal and having mommy come back and say, sorry, I yelled. I probably shouldn't have done that. And doing that repair, talking about it moving forward. Isn't that what we want kids or adults to be doing in relationships? To stick with the relationship, to work through the yuck, to come back and to work it out and to get better at it. Like to not just run from problems and not to blame others either, but to take accountability and show up better and try. I mean, that's all we want from them. And we're role modeling that, and kids learn from role modeling. So what better role model? Okay, I tangented again. So we're talking about practical tips from Chava Rosenbaum. Okay, so we talked about staying in the conversation and all the ways to do that. Oh, and books. You said you have books to look at. There are so many great Nurtured Heart books out there. And yes, so staying in the conversation in those ways, not allowing the moment to get you down, just getting through it, but in retrospect, reflecting on setting yourself up for success for the future. What do I need? What do my kids need? And how can I help myself should this happen again? Because it will happen again. When we just are like, oh, it's over, shoof, and forget about it, we're missing out the opportunity of setting ourselves up for better success in the future.
And by
What
the
else
way,
did
when
you
you
say? Oh
stay
my
in the
gosh, you said so many
conversation,
good. Oh, and closing the day positively. Sorry.
yeah. I was going to say, like, when you stay in the conversation, you have certain refrains. I have certain refrains that help me in that moment, that are quicker to come to me in that moment. So things like, this will pass, this moment will pass, like he'll get through it and then we'll be able to reset. Or look for the right, or, what's going right, or something, again, that somebody you interviewed said recently, is, hang on, it just flew out of my mind. Something that they said was, I'll come back to that. But these comments can come to you that much more quickly, and keep you engaged in the work, and not resorting back to this like innate behavior that maybe you grew up with and can reroute you.
And I want to speak to something so deep and powerful and just I feel like such a gift to the universe in this work that everything you've just shared is so it's not just a great way to parent or like a way to manage. Like this is so deeply healing for the world, and why is I think everyone will relate to me, but definitely for me, when I think back to my childhood, you know, those good moments, those moments that were really powerfully connected, or where I was really seen or appreciated, or, just those good moments with my parents. Like, I don't like hold on to the like, yeah, but that morning I was yelled at. So who cares that you sat with me and held my hand as I fell asleep? Like, no, like those good moments stand alone. They stand alone in spite of, regardless of how many negative moments, if anything, like I hold on to them like precious gems. Like that's my proof, that I'm okay, that I'm loved, that I have a secure base. Like I hold on to those special moments. And I've heard stories of people who have had really hard starts to their lives. Like there's a podcast on the Nurtured Heart Approach podcast from the Children's Success Foundation. You can find it on iHeartRadio, possibly other places too. So many amazing interviews there. But where this one woman is talking, I wish I knew her name. but she's talking about her life in foster care. And she's talking about this one woman who believed in her, and
Mm.
almost in this like very like aggressive way. Like she would yell at her, like after, these meetings with the social workers and all the people telling her how messed up she is and all the problems she's having and how, her bad behavior and whatever. And she would yell at her like, that's not true. You are so amazing. And I'm not going to misquote. Like, I'm not going to quote because I'm going to misquote. But the idea was that she was this voice to her, this one voice amidst all the foster homes, amidst all the voices in her life, that was just like, no, you are going to rock it. You have so much to bring to the world. And that one voice carried her through her life. Still to this day, that voice is in her head. When we hold on to, oh my gosh, I said that to my kid, now they're forever traumatized, more often than not, I'm yelling, more often than not, I'm stressed, more often I'm not, we're staying with that. And ultimately, it's going to make us hate ourselves or hate our parenting or feel disillusioned more, and hence less threshold for challenge and
Right.
more negative behavior. It's a cycle that just continues, where if we could just learn to leave it and let it be and let it just be the status, more often than not, I'm yelling, whoopie doo. That's just who I am, and let it be, take the negativity out of it. We are opening the door for those good moments to be standalone good moments. And those good moments are going to take our kids through their life. And so it's not about how many bad moments there are and getting rid of the bad moments. It's about how many good moments there are and building on those. Because our kids love us, our kids need us, and they want us, and they're rooting for us to be the best parents. And so they're looking for those good moments too, and they're willing to take them no matter what. They're just waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, I know adults that will say, all I want is for my parents to apologize and show up. That's all I want. I don't need them to change. I don't need them to take my whole childhood away. I just want them to see me. And like as adults, I want them in my life, right? Like we want our parents. So let go of it, of all that negative, and just enjoy that there's one good moment, two good moments, and celebrate that, and our kids have that to hold on to forever.
Yeah, and it amazes me how forgiving my kids are, and we'll have a tough moment, and then the next moment, my 4-year old would say, "You're the best mommy ever," and and even my 10-year old will say something to that effect too. And I'm like, I'm really glad you're not remembering what just happened, like yesterday or even this morning. I'm just gonna take that and be like, "Thank you. I don't feel that way, but thank you." And okay, I maybe not being like, yeah, I am, I'm getting better about that, but I am able to say thank you, in that moment, and not be like, no, I'm not. Remember what I did before, but just be like, yeah, thanks. This moment I am.
And that's all they're so in the moment. They're so in the moment. They're
Yeah.
in the moment when they play, they're in their moment when they cry, they're in the moment when they
Yeah.
fight, and then
Yeah.
it's a new moment. And so that's all they want. So, the biggest gift to them is to forgive ourselves and to be
Yeah.
willing to just move on to the next moment and, you know, make a new good moment. That's all. Such a gift.
Yeah. And
Such a
they
gift.
do
Because you
want
know
us
what?
to
Even
move
if,
on. Meaning, like, if we
yeah,
there have been times when I've like stayed in that frustration, and like my kids will call me out on it, and they'll be like, okay, are you gonna play, like I'm playing a board game or something, and I will have just gotten frustrated from something. They're like, okay, mommy, like, are you gonna actually play, or are you just gonna be frustrated? I'm like, okay, let me be present, and like let me drop whatever just frustrated me, um, because that's all they want. Like they've already let it go.
yeah, they're so amazing like that. This has been such a practical conversation, Chava. I'm so glad you agreed to come on. Thank you for being so open and honest with the struggle, with the brilliant way that you're navigating it, and all of your practical suggestions. I'm curious if maybe there's just one more thing that you'd like to just, leave our audience with. Any reflections or thoughts or advice or really anything before we go, and I'm sure that our audience is valuing this so much because this is a really, really, I think more than anything, practical conversation, which is exactly what I hoped it would be. So thank you so much. So yeah,
Of
any
course.
last minute reflection before we go?
Um, yeah, I think a couple of things. First of all, I think just having this conversation is helpful for me too. It's kind of reflecting back to me what I'm doing right, which helps me to kind of like in the nurtured heart way, helps me to be like, right, I am that. So I now expect that of myself, or I'm more likely to do that, knowing that I've just spent all this time talking about it. I think I just want to go back to the challenges and the diagnosis of my son, just because it was one thing that I really got tripped up on a lot when I started Nurtured Heart. And as I learned more about it as well, because Nurtured Heart has a way of saying that you don't need to diagnose and you don't need to be on meds. And I will just say that my son's therapies in combination with Nurtured Heart has been just such a rewarding and successful um, plan of action. So, when knowing that we couldn't explain his behaviors and they weren't fitting into stereotypical diagnoses, it was helpful to get him reevaluated. We already had him evaluated, to get him reevaluated. So we had more clarity on what was happening so that I could put myself in this place, like I've been talking about, of like, oh, it's not just him doing this because he doesn't love me. It's that he doesn't verbalize that in the same way as a lot of other kids. Or it's not that he's just being mean and but like he struggles with impulsivity. So having that diagnosis was helpful. And then having him work with the ABA therapist and speech therapist and physical therapist, or I'm sorry, OT, and regular therapist, and and all these things has helped me to have some more structure. So when I need to provide clarity, I'm better able to do that, or I'm better able to understand what his needs are, so that I can do that, while still having the nurture heart approach of focusing on what he's doing right. Or I see it's through talking to some of his like his OT, his occupational therapist, and she's like, "Do you know he's so bright?" Or "Do you know like he struggles so much in school, but she sees him as so bright and he is so quick to learn things and he is like faster than almost anyone I've worked with." I'm like, really? And so learning that from her perspective, I'm able to translate that into how I interact with him and give him what he needs. So anyways, I just wanted to really put that out there, that was something that took me a while to learn, that it doesn't have to be nurtured heart or bust. It really, the combination of these things have really worked well. Um, and just kind of what we've already said about not giving up, even if you feel, or I feel like I did it wrong or it's not working, just to kind of keep putting at it, going at it, and trying, and to bring other people into it. Like, it's hard to do this alone. It's so much better and rewarding and easier to do it in community. And that happens by just, like I said, listening to your podcast or joining these group calls, and not giving up.
Yay. Thank you so much, Chava. And yes, I love that point about all the therapies in the world can, all is a big word. So many of the therapies in the world can only enhance um, our lives. Really, they're there with incredible wisdom tools and practical help in clarity in stand three. And that it's not about no diagnosis and no medical intervention and
Right.
no anything at all. It's about where it's coming from. Is it coming from that
Yeah.
stand one of like, oh my gosh, this kid is so messed up and he just doesn't fit in and we just need to fix him and make him normal and make him finally not, finally not stress me out. Like he's stressing me out. I need an answer. I have to like change him, right? To this place of like, ooh, how can we help him? How can we be a better fit for him? How can this world be a better fit for him? How can we support him? Where it's like, you are an awesome person. I believe in you. I know you have so much potential. I'm not giving up on you. And then it's like
Absolutely.
only enhancing. It's like, yeah,
If I could just
beautiful.
say one
Love that
more thing
point.
that just came to mind, and talking about the benefits that I've seen in this, the change that I've seen this with that son in particular, this is a child who I could go through the day and just, point out all the things he's not doing right. But because I ask him that question, just asking that question about what are your greatnesses today at the end of the day, I've learned more about him and I've learned to respect him more. So, for example, when he said, you know, because I asked that question, he said, "Well, my whole class, there was a substitute today, and my whole class was messing around, not listening, and I didn't." I was like, "Wow, you did that?" And I'm able to tell him that what that shows about him. That shows that you're really respectful, and maybe you just thought they were crazy, and that's why you didn't join in. But whatever, like you just knew what to do that was right. There have been a couple times when he said something that related to like him being honest, and I now know him as somebody who has that trait, or how organized he is, and I see that now because sometimes I'm looking for it more. Sometimes he's more likely to share that because I've asked him, and so he's looking for his greatness to be able to share with me at the end of the day, and that is such a priceless experience.
Oh my gosh, Chava, I got chills up and down my body when you said that story and the beauty and healing in that, because how often do
Yeah,
people feel like nothing I ever do counts because nobody sees it. They just see what I'm doing that's not right, right? And for him to have the space to be able to share that with you, and you, it's like he's being, the good parts of him are being seen, they're being recognized, and there's so much room for that. And look how you're learning about him because of that, like just that open space of like, tell me more because I know there's goodness here, you know?
yeah.
So beautiful. Wow. You're amazing. You are nurtured heart, Hava. You've got this, girl. We're gonna have to
Thank
have
you for
someone else
all
on
of
this
your guidance.
podcast because you don't qualify. You
But
don't
plenty of
qualify as a
times,
beginner.
plenty of times I don't do this, but I'm still trying. Not, I
Neither do
can't.
I, and I don't allow it to. But I am nurtured heart because
Yeah.
I don't allow it to take over. It's been such a treat having having this conversation with you. It's been such a treat knowing you and having you in the groups. And I will see you next Thursday on our group coaching.
Sounds great.
Alrighty.
Thank
Till
you,
next time,
Missy.
everybody.
Thank you.